Welcome everyone to GTAC's In This Together series webinar. Today's topic is, well, we got them home safely, now what? So our group of expert panelists, industry leaders are going to be sharing with us today. Before we get started, just want to let you know we have Mike Aoki with us, who every week diligently serves, doing so many things behind the scenes. So thank you, Mike, before we get started. Thank you. And I'll just tell you a little housekeeping items. If you look, there is a chat feature, and it's in the panel part of GoToWebinar. And you can see there's a red square around it. You can raise your hand if you have a question. So we want this to be very interactive. You can ask anything throughout. I'll be moderating the chat and the question area, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. And anything we don't get addressed during the session, you're more than welcome to reach out to our speakers afterwards, and they're happy to serve. So I'm really thrilled to bring our panelists on today. And really, I can tell you how much prep they've done, not so that it's a prepared talking head session. It's really so they can deliver value within the limited time that we have, because we have full respect that there is competing demands on your time. So I'd love to introduce this panelist with such deep gratitude to them all. So we have Anne-Marie Greer from Shopping Channel. So she's an industry veteran, over 20 years experience, progressive leadership roles, currently director at TSC, the Shopping Channel, very people-centered leader. And she has tremendous experience leading remote agents prior to COVID. So all the speakers today, they have led remote teams prior to this sudden burst of everybody working remotely. So I'm thrilled to have Anne-Marie here. She shares from the heart, beautiful stories will come out, and valuable lessons learned. So thank you, Anne-Marie. We have Mark Rodriguez here from Contact Point 360. He's Senior Vice President Global Operations, and he's come from industry, lots like Reliance Home Comfort, Direct Energy. He's led global teams, tremendous sales and service background, and again, previous experience leading remote teams. Then many of you know Bruce Simpson. He's been a keynote at GTAC conference 2 years ago, visionary in our industry. He gets deep into sales and service teams, and so his experience is first as an in-house leader, and then he was founder and COO of a third-party, Client Logic Citel. And then for the last 15 years, he's been partner at Switchgear. And they do tremendous work in the industry, highly, highly, highly respected. And Bruce has been serving GTAC from the get-go, when there was 15 people in a room. So I'm just thrilled that he's here today to share. And this whole team has put in a lot of time and energy, but Bruce actually had the vision for this webinar. So I'm really proud to turn it over to all of you. Bruce, I hand this over to you now.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you. Awesome. Welcome, everybody, and thank you, Anne-Marie and Mark. They've had to put up with a lot of coffee chats just so we could make sure we oriented ourselves. And Maestro Mike, thanks for running the show. So as Sangeeta said, riding shotgun for 12 different clients as we went into COVID. It wasn't about getting us home. It was about actually what came next. So first of all, kudos for folks that are on the phone of getting people home safely. And the real question is, so now what? And so part of what we need to acknowledge is this is just the end of the beginning and nothing more. And so work from home or work remote or virtual, whatever you want to call it, isn't new. I think Evelyn, of the ones I know, Evelyn Page was the first at Pizza that ran it since, 1992. So what we're going to try and do here a little bit is give you a very clear, actionable set of things that we think you can go and do. And we set this up to be a coffee chat. So our ask is, if you operators are standing by, so if you'll put your chat or your question in, Sangeeta, we're going to pause several times specifically to actually pick questions and make sure that we can talk about them. So fill your coffee cups, and hopefully this is the start of a really good long weekend for you. So Maestro Mike, I also have an auxiliary purpose that I'm showcasing some of the far north of Canada. So I brought my vacation photos along. But truthfully, the work's just started, because after disruption, there is both real risk and opportunity for us. So I want to take a moment to go into those. The first is that sudden disruption causes huge inconsistency. Everyone's very fragmented. We let people figure it out, and in many ways try and figure out how we're going to change it on the back end. Or we try and boil the ocean and we try and do 50 things and we miss what we need to get right. So there's a real risk that's kind of, present. And I see this as being a huge opportunity for us, that we have a very short window of time. For those that are publicly traded companies, Q1 results are just going to come out in probably third week of May. So we get, because of timing, a bit of a let. But the truth is, revenues and costs are going to be a real challenge for us. So we have a bit of a window of opportunity to create some urgency for ourselves, and I hope that today helps you actually take advantage of that. The other thing that I want to talk to is, this has really caused us to have some great opportunity to actually fix what we could have done anyways. And so we have a couple of things that we've kind of come together on. So we have a big, hairy, audacious goal, and that is to help you build a plan. For many of you, you completed the survey. So we built our dialogue today around the conversation that people had. So we're going to help you build a plan. I'd suggest, if you really want to get the most, you might want to take some notes. But we're also going to give you a little bit of a plan that you can start with your team, a little bit of a guidebook, a Sherpa guide, shortcut book. And so what we built it was for 3 audiences. We're going to call the first one Basecamp. Right? You got people home, congratulations. And really our point was, we're going to, get back to taking care of business. I'm going to not break into song there. So that's Basecamp. And so we've really tried to organize. There are some things that you need to be worried about first, because if you try and build on top of those, it's only going to get harder for you. The second we call the Big Ascent. Like, this really, truthfully, would be for some people who have, you've had a tethered work from home operation for a while, and that umbilical cord's been cut. People can't come in on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. And that we're going to try and arm you for, like, what happens if you can't send people to an operation? I've seen most training rooms, they are not social distance, allowed, right? You're shoulder to shoulder because we're packing them in, right? So the truth is that we're going to try and work on, how do you restart the mission and how do we do it from where you are? And the last one we're going to talk about is what we call the future frontier, which is a little bit of a vision for, like, what you should be excited about right now, as opposed to, what you might be overwhelmed about. Okay? So, Maestro, on to the next one. So, Basecamp. So you got dropped off and you got everyone home. You were compassionate. You were helpful. And the truth is, you have to kind of get back to business. So we picked a couple of topics to talk around. One is around resetting purpose. The goal wasn't just to get them home safely, to run an effective and efficient operation. And so we're going to start from there, and we're going to sort of dig our way in. And I'd ask Anne-Marie to kind of pass the sugar while I let her grab the baton.
Thanks, Bruce. So as you said, most people's first priority, obviously, get people home safely. though we got them home safely, we were still anxious. So we recognized really quickly that we needed a plan to help them get there. So one of the first things I will say, our team was about timing. It was about doing it very quickly. But we didn't want to really lose sight of all the great work that we had done when we were getting folks home. We didn't want to lose the trust. We wanted to make sure that we still kept spirits in line. However, we really needed to move from motivator and counselor to, I will say, a compassionate leader. So there were 3 things that our team really did to help guide our teams. We created parameters to help them operate. So we provided them with guardrails, what we were doing and why we were doing it. Number 2, we identified and aligned on our critical metrics. And then we put dashboards in place to make sure that we were, again, aligned, we were aware, we had the reporting, and that we were able to quickly understand what was going on. We ensured we trained our team on how to understand those and to coach to them. And thirdly, we clarified and formalized those indicators so that, again, the team understood what success would look like. And so what were some of the reports that were really needed, whether it's adherence, the compliance reports, the quality reports, to make sure that we were still on track. And as a result, the plan helped us to move forward. We kept our performance, and we kept on getting better very quickly. But just as importantly, we also kept the morale of our team, which was critically important to us. And that was actually at all levels.
Awesome. Emery, can I just ask, one of the things that I've seen is people used to have visual indicators. They didn't need a report to know that Edna was working and Hamish was distracted. What kind of coaching would you give in terms of just sort of the behavioral metrics that we might have seen indicated versus sort of the outcome metrics that we're kind of driving for? Any coaching that you would kind of point towards?
No, that's a great point. I think 2 things are really key again, so that we don't become Big Brother. I think the check-ins that we do with folks are really critical, but it's what you arm yourself with in those check-ins that are critical as well. So making sure, again, whether it's the adherence reports, it's your compliance, and then calling and checking in and having a conversation. Hey, how's it going? Number 1, but just checking in. Are you having any systems difficulties? How are your systems working for you? Notice this, or having a conversation around it so it doesn't become just punitive, I think is really important. But you need to make sure you have the right reports in place and you teach people really to understand those.
Awesome. Mark, you're looking like $1 billion. How about you weigh in? Is there anything in particular, as even from a third-party lens, that you see as being really, really important in terms of resetting purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, like anybody who got to Basecamp deserves a big thumbs up. And I think I mentioned it to both of you in some of our conversations. This felt like getting chased by a tornado down the road, right? We knew it was coming. It was very stressful. So being able to reset purpose quickly was critical because we didn't have a choice. It was either get hit by a tornado, you're not taking calls. In the case of a BPAO organization, you have a whole number of people who are no longer working. Right? You have clients who aren't getting service. So it was not acceptable, right? So for us, resetting purpose was absolutely critical. And anybody who got there, again, deserves a massive thumbs up. As far as, communication protocol goes, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but just having really, really clear guidelines for every single agent, every TL, every trainer in place is really important. It's one of the things we developed early on. So concurrent with looking at technology that will allow us to work from home, one of the things that we did was built out sort of cheat sheets. And if my printer worked right now, I'd show you that cheat sheet, right? It was, contact lists for people to help them know who to talk to when your technology's not working. Is the VPN working? Can you log in? Is it your home internet? How am I getting paid, right? All of those things are weighing heavily on every single person. Because in addition to just sending people home, people are going home. They might be living with an 87-year-old aunt. They have people that they're really concerned about, right? So there's the additional social stress of knowing that there's a killer virus out there, right? And I think we're gaining a better understanding of it now, but certainly getting to Basecamp, resetting purpose in the middle of all that is really a small miracle, I think, for, every single person that accomplished it. So hats off to everyone.
It's a huge task. I think just part of why I nudged Sangeeta to have this conversation was because I don't want people to fall over from exhaustion and think that's the end of the game, right? So it's a typical thing that can happen after a big expenditure of energy. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how do we combine, like, you know, like part of, this isn't new, this work from home thing, and some things are easy to mimic and some are hard. How do we take the energy and purpose of a great blitz day, or, you know, one of those days where the floor is going, you know, and like there's good stuff happening, and sometimes it's one of the reasons why I love outbound centers and working with them, is because they were electrifying. Can we just talk about what I see as being one of the hardest things for people to mimic? Like, we'll show, come on, jump on my Skype bridge at 5 o'clock and we'll have a beer together. And if you have open mic, you know, at this time we can, but let's just talk a little bit about, like, just so any ideas around how people will be able to mimic that kind of in-house kind of enthusiasm, energy and purpose together.
I can talk to that one a bit. I think the answer is over communication, and I'll give you some specific examples of what we've seen our operations team do, our HR teams, all of our team managers and team leaders. We spend a lot more time celebrating success to start with, right? So a lot of the businesses we service are very sales oriented, right? And in a sales organization, when you've got a whole bunch of folks on the floor and you got a dynamic where, you know, people make a sale, they retain some customers, they've hit their 10th sale of the day, you can high five someone. Well, you can't do that now. Well, you can, but no one's there, right? So the reality is, you know, repurposing the focus of, you know, team leaders and managers to help really look for those opportunities to recognize people is important. I mean, the other piece is, I mean, we've had, you know, crazy hat day, we've had jersey day, we've had, you know, crazy hair day. I won that, by the way, just for the record. So they're all things that sort of keep people feeling a little more comfortable and more recognized, because one of the worst things you can do is under communicate in a situation like this. If you're under communicating, most people, because again, the dark cloud of the virus is over everybody, right? They start getting discouraged. And I think it's in human nature to start feeling more negative about things. And it's hard to sell, it's hard to retain, because, you know, they talk about smiling while you're on the phone, right? For an agent, it does make a difference. So your emotional disposition is really reflected on your ability to communicate with people, certainly if you're in a sales or retention type role too, or a customer care role. So doing all of those things, over communicating for us, I think has made a big difference. And, you know, we'll send congratulation notes out to the floor in general, who are all absolutely virtual at this point. And we'll see people, you know, kicking back in saying, yeah, you know, John, Mary, whoever else, you know, great job. We're really proud of you. Everybody's sort of getting in on it, right? So that's really worked out well for us. And it's just, so the advice there is just over communicate if you can, and congratulate people even more than you normally would.
Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, just one thing to build on that. I totally agree. It's the over communicating, but I think it's also to remember that individuals, like if you start with an individual, Bruce, to help recognize them, the momentum can build. You take your team leaders, who are not always the people who are comfortable in creating their plans. Our team created plans and resources and helped train our supervisors or our team leaders to be able to go out and rah-rah. We've done theme days, we've done directors challenges to make sure that the results that we're looking for, that we're putting some, I would say, themes or fun around it as well to help generate that blitz that we would have in the center. We do it virtually. We're making sure we're sending out tons of congratulations and publicly awarding people, which is really great. We're doing something new, which is called Ask Me Anything. So again, we're getting on and we're able to celebrate people publicly in a larger group setting as well. So really to try and keep the energy up to create the results.
So it feels a little bit like, and, you know, as I kind of moved down through the bottom of the list, it feels like if transparency was already a big part of your culture, if, you know, results and performance were a big part of the culture and very transparent. Yeah, Anne-Marie, when we first had coffee together, one of the things you said was, if you were running a really great operation before, you stand a chance to be able to do it afterwards, right? 100%. And what I feel like I've had 2 clients that have now realized that they have, you know, that they've got some opportunity in terms of kind of how they run the business today. Yeah. So
So it becomes really important that it says, you've done it fabulously internally, so how do I just make it virtual? So helping people to just transition to the virtual piece is what we're doing.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So we're going to just ask Sangeeta. We're going to invite Sangeeta, as she's been watching the chat, to jump in terms of any questions that people have asked, and we'll see if we can Q&A through them.
Right now, Bruce, nothing's come in. I can see some questions will be coming in. So right now, you're good to go.
Perfect. Perfect.
Sorry, Sangeeta, there is one question actually. So one question from Sharif just came in though, which says, how do you identify the ones that are not participating? That can be any member of the panel.
Yeah.
I think two things. You're going to be aware, obviously. I think we have talked about this as well. At first, we really tried to make everyone get involved. So I think it's really important to be intentional on what's really mandatory, where you need to have people involved, and what's just really trying to continue to build culture and engagement. And when you notice again that people aren't engaged in I would say the mandatory stuff, that's when you're going to probably have individual conversations. So you're going to reach out to that to touch base, because as Mark said earlier, you don't know what might be going on in their home, in parts of their lives. So you want to be cognizant of that, but you also need to know that you're running a business, but take it with compassion, have a conversation and check in, and then tell them how important they are and how important it is for them to participate. So I think that it's really important to make sure that we have mandatory and it's very intentional around those kind of activities. And then the more so where people can just show up, the better, the more they enjoy those just showing up ones, the more often they will, because it's an opportunity to get together with their peers, with their friends that they haven't seen. So I think that people will show up more often. Hopefully that answered your question, Sharif. Good question.
Smart guy. Can I just add one little top up? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I just from a bit of a different perspective here too on the communication side. So you want to make sure your customers or your executives are also communicating. So we're talking a lot about agents and team leaders, but you got permission to get to Basecamp because you convinced a group of people. It could be a privacy officer in a bank. It could be an executive. It could be a customer, right? That you were competent and you weren't going to compromise any security or any quality by sending people home. Now, you have to keep engaging your clients that we found pretty much on a daily basis to give them confidence that you're still on track, everything's good, and the model is working well. And you're not creating any type of scenario where you can create risk for an organization, right? So that's the other piece. So there's employee engagement, but there's also customer engagement, not waiting until they come to you, engaging them before they come to you.
Yeah, awesome. I might I might just leave one little thought as we go to the next bit, because we got a lot of we have a heavy ascent ahead of us. I think that a lot of people it's okay, Mike. I think from a lot of people's point of view, a lot of privacy and PIPEDA and a lot of concerns are actually taking place right now. I'd want people to actually have on their radar screen that right now they're probably, in many ways, they might not be compliant with what's going on in the home. Right, so I just put a little asterisk right there because Mark, you touched on something I actually think is a bit of a showstopper for folks. So let's start. So you got them home in Basecamp, and it actually is going to we have heavy lifting ahead. So if you'll Maestro move us forward, I would highlight a couple of things. We've divided to 3 different buckets, right? So first is the operating structure and cadence of what goes on inside the operation. How do you run this? It used to run in a certain way in a facilities-based operation. You might have had a couple of Klingons for overnight or after hours, but truthfully, it was mostly a facilities-based operating system. Second is, I think about it as how do you launch stuff into the change in training systems that you're going to need to actually move and keep the business fed and develop capability. And the third is the support teams and functions, right? Like the HRs, the ITs, the hiring, all those things that they used to have people coming in. You had, an IT person. So I'm just going to start with Anne-Marie. If you could start us off a little bit, just people are interested in, what we would work on first. And just having done this a couple of times, I'm not going to give away, how long ago. But how, just your thought about, sort of what would you be working on first here?
So from your operating systems and the cadence, again, I think so incredibly important to have, when your sustainment plan, let's say, that you have consistency, you're checking in right away, that it's not just to say hello, it's with a very clear intention. Are things running smoothly? Are they running the way you expect them to run? I think that when you're looking at your operating structure, again, you're looking at your communication strategy. We talked a lot about that, but again, it's really about the cadence of that. Is it daily, weekly, monthly? Making sure that you have all levels in your plan. Make sure that you're as visible as possible and as close to face as you can be. I would say let people know, your associates, your TLs, your management team, how you'll hear from us. Here's how often. We'll tell you what we're going to be able to share. We'll listen to you. We'll take your feedback. I also think the next operational plan that you really want to have in place and you really want to leverage is your cultural plan. And that's really about making sure that you keep everyone engaged, focused to be able to help to achieve your results and not leaving anyone behind, right? But not forcing people forward, but really making sure that you're very clear on that. The other piece is, I think it's really about making sure you clearly define roles and expectations and who's responsible for what. And again, coming back to your critical KPIs are kept in mind there as well. So if you have, whether it's your performance, your checklist for your morale or your employee engagement, your focus areas, I think if you have those operating structures in place and how often and who will be checking in on them, I think it will definitely help you navigate your way.
Awesome. Emery, can you just drill down a little on one example of a role that you think changed quite dramatically? Right? Yeah. If you think about, you talked about roles and, we get the concept for sure, but is there one in particular that you would point to that you feel like changed significantly?
Yeah, I would say for our team leaders, it really changed up for them, right? So these guys are used to having their teams right in front of them. They could go do a shoulder tap, have a quick conversation. They can see exactly what's going on with their team members. They get reports from other people to help diagnose. Here's what you need to be looking at. Here's some of the quick information that you need to be following up on diligently. Now they're at home. We need to make sure that, again, it's all virtual. They don't get to touch and feel and go out to see their people right away. So I think for them, we really needed to make sure that we gave them the guidance, the support, the training to be able to say, here's what you need to look for. Here's some of the things that you need to do differently. Here's what a checkpoint would look like. And so we really detailed it for them and a lot of follow-up for them as well, right? So it wasn't just on pure metrics. It's about how do you engage your team? How do you make sure that you're following up on a continuous basis? So there was lots of conversations and us also making sure we're checking in with our team leaders and doing the triages.
Awesome. Really, really good. Really, Mark, you look like $1 million, but I want to hear you talk. Is there anything in particular as you kind of run through that, maybe from a change or a support team function that you feel like people really should be highlighting and focusing on?
Well, from a support team function, I think of the trainers that we have, right? So, and again, in some of our pre-chats, we were sort of discussing the fact that, if you were accustomed as a trainer, maybe to having a team of, or a class of 20 or 25 people sitting there, the value you really provide isn't really around so much the information that you're relaying. You can learn that from YouTube. It's really about your ability to read every single individual in the room and know if they understand things, right? Before you're actually pushing them through to say, yep, you passed your training. So in our world, virtual training, we try to keep things to about 10 or 12 people maximum. And the trainers really had to relearn how to read every single individual, because now you're looking at cubes on a screen. It's like Hollywood squares, right? If you have too many of them on there, it's not working out. You're not going to be able to actually understand if they really have a clear view to what you're trying to teach them. But just stepping back for a minute, just on the operating structure and the cadence side, I mean, we spent a lot of time as we were working our way from Basecamp to, more of a stable environment, looking for platforms that would, I think, satisfy PCI requirements as an example. And I think this is something that a lot of people might be struggling with. We probably went through 6 different demos. We had software that we had used for work from home previously. However, some customers had a bit of a different requirement, right? So getting the right operating and structure in place at this point for the big Ascent is critical. You do not want to be an organization that has a downstream data breach. You really don't want to be that. So you've got to have the right type of software in place and the right type of processes with the agent that provide a similar level of security than you would in a bricks and mortar environment, right? And on the cadence side, I'll tell you what we saw too. So again, at the beginning of this whole process, you have customers that are happy. You can pick up the phone for me. I'm thrilled. Thank you. You're my hero. Now you've got to start looking at the justification of your existence as a call center in some cases. If you're a sales center, retention center, the one thing the expectation that clients are going to have of you is you're going to be delivering on those numbers, right? And again, sales and retention are sometimes emotional, you need people that are emotionally strong to really get into the groove, and it's tougher to do that when you're alone. So at home, right? So the reality is now at this point, you get executives calling saying, you were a hero last month, you picked up the phone, I need you to get back to your sales numbers because my organization is going through some, massive financial difficulty at this point, right? Everybody's stock price is down. So it's become really important to pick up the cadence again, get back on track, start delivering those sales numbers. Then you'll be a superhero if you do that, right?
Awesome points. Awesome points. So,
can I add one thing? Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah,
can I add one thing? Just from a training perspective, I think what's critical, and Mark, you touched on it, training, critical, new hires, making sure that they are able to perform in the new environment is going to be critical because now they're individual in their house. It's about building the culture for those guys to understand our culture and also to bring them back into the bigger business. So something to really think about how you do, whether it's your onboarding, your training, your ICU, and really think about how are you going to do it effectively virtually. So those systems need to also be in place as you're going through this to think ahead.
Wow, I think that's one of the big challenges that folks face. But I also want to just ask Sangeeta. So, Sangeeta, any questions that folks have?
Definitely.
Anne-Marie makes some really great points.
Yes, I have a couple of questions here. So, what's the ideal team size for a remote team? So, contact centers typically have 1 to 12 or so ratio. What will the new model look like?
Can I
Manoj D'Souza.
Manoj, you must be a bright guy. I think that the answer is it depends, like most of the time, right? Like, anytime somebody asks about ratios, it depends on what you've loaded onto the group. I would say that I see a lot of positive innovation about to happen because if a team manager used to do 5 jobs because they were in the building with somebody, be that payroll, be that IT support, be that put my hand up, ask a question. I see a tremendous amount of the ability to be able to consolidate functions that we used to dump onto the team manager because of close proximity. And you could argue that, IT could be doing something remotely, taking over the screen of an agent and supporting them. Somebody else could be doing payroll support. Somebody else could be doing some of the elements that a team manager used to do. And I feel like the ratio is going to go from 1 to 12. I feel like a team manager with, unencumbered by all the other stuff could do somewhere north of 15 or so if their schedule was, overlapping and all those good kind of things. So it's a really, really good question. 1 minute before we run off, Mark.
Yeah, and I think what I'd like to add to that is the fact that even though you've got very experienced agents, as soon as you get them home, they're now nesting again, right? So you got to have a different perspective. So maybe at the beginning of a work from home initiative, it's a 1 to 10 perspective, and then you can work your way up to 1 to 15 because it's difficult for everybody to, use all of these tools intuitively, right? So I'd say you'd want to start from 1 to 10, and if you have the opportunity to do that, and work your way back up to a 1 to 15 ratio. And I like the way, you know, Bruce framed it up. Basically, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. I've got a bunch of those, so I know what that's like, right? Well, it takes a lot of people to help, you know, an agent be successful in this new environment, right? So you've got IT, you've got TLs, you've got SMEs, you've got QA people. So some of these people in our environment got repurposed, and we had a bigger focus on work from home folks until they got comfortable and we got sort of the big Ascent, right? So I would say the number, to Bruce's point too, is variable. But remember, your agents are now in nesting. Doesn't matter if they've been there for 8 years. This is new to them, and you got to take that into consideration.
Wonderful point. Maestro.
I have one more question. Could I ask it?
Sure.
Okay, quick. Okay. Have teams seen an easing of customer expectations of perfect calls due to customer understanding that there's a challenge with the overall business processes at this time? Does this make less pressured for the agent? And this is from Tim Richardson.
Anne-Marie, why don't you jump in on, did you hear Tim's question?
Yeah, I'm hoping I've got the context right. So it's our customers being more sensitive, or right? So absolutely, our customers have been fantastic. They understand whether it's they wanted our associates to go home. They were asking, "Are you not at home?" and everything else. So they are being so incredibly patient and compassionate, as well as our associates right back. So I think that this situation has created a really incredible environment from that perspective. So I have seen that.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Good. Thank you for being aggressive there, Sangeeta. So as we look at this, picture was taken at 1:30 in the morning. We're going to talk about looking forward. And this is really around, we got forced to change. Some things we didn't necessarily want to. We would have run the status quo for a while. And talk a little bit about why we would go back and why the finance guy might think this is a good idea to stay the course on what we're doing right now. So, Anne-Marie, why don't you just get us started a little bit in sort of like future looking? Like, doesn't mean you can not do, you know, kind of some of the heavy lifting and let's just focus on the cool, innovative, exciting stuff. But there is some real, there's some huge possibility and vision in front of us.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's great opportunity, to your point. I think it's starting to determine the next step, right? So it's about making sure, are we getting ready for the future? So right sizing our organization, for us, we're starting the thinking. The percentage of work from home versus internal, how we can decide who's going to work from home and who may not be the best candidate. For us, we start in our AMA, our Ask Me Anything conversation. Some of our associates are asking us that question, and we're saying, you know what, it depends on, we got you home. That was our first thing. That was a temporary solution. We need to make sure you have the right technology. We also need to make sure that you're able to work from home, that it's conducive, whether it's through your performance or just your home. So it's having those conversations to start now so that there's no surprises later. I would also say that we need to start thinking about the long-term technical solutions, the tools that we'll have to manage. So will they require funding? Will we require IT or networking? Will we require additional training? How big a lift is it, and how easy is the solution? And do our teams have the skills and capabilities that we'll need for the future? So it's really starting to think about what's next, and as well the broader thinking for the business. How do we make sure that we're taking insights in from what we're learning so that we can help the business to continue to move forward, and any insights that we can help them to inform the decisions, whether it's from a customer perspective, whether it's from how we're working from home. I think this is the time to start thinking about those things. So you can do your tactics and operational every day to day, but we really need to be thinking about the future as well.
If I can jump in on just like one thing before I hand it off to Mark. I think that from knowledge, the capability is going to be part of the big frontier, right? We instead of just training people, how do we get them capable in this new virtual world? And that's a really hard mission for a lot of knowledge-based contact centers, right? Most of who are on the phone. So, Mark, over to you.
Yeah, so I think within our own organization, one of the things we did was just embrace this whole thing, right? Now, obviously, it's just a horrific reason to get forced into change. Nobody wants to be forced into this type of change, but here we are. So one of the ways we looked at it was just an opportunity to completely retool our own organization and not just be good at work from home, but really be great at it, right? And the advantages we started seeing early on were things like, I'll call it, geotechnical BCP. I kind of just made that up, but realistically, if you've got a site in Mississauga, and our recruiting team would typically look at a perimeter around Mississauga and hire people within that geography, right? Awesome. Now we have the opportunity to go to other provinces within the country. We can go all the way to Newfoundland. You can go to different places where you can really pick up some people who would do an outstanding job for you. What you get from that, though, is a natural business contingency plan. We have one client where we've got agents spread between Montreal, Mississauga, and Bogota. So pre-COVID, who would have ever thought all three sites would go down? We had the best BCP plan in the world. We didn't, right? We had to shut everything down. So by having the ability to actually set things up where, you've got a certain percentage of people working in bricks and mortar and other people, and to Anne-Marie's point, that have a propensity to want to work from home, having an opportunity, it just broadens your horizon in so many ways. The other piece is just from a social perspective for a minute here. There's probably no better time in history for this to happen for us, right? And the reason is we've got these things, right? So basically, for the last 10 or 15 years, we have been training to interact more on a social level virtually. Everybody does it, continuously, right? 3-year-olds are in training right now to work in our business in the future because they are absolutely capable of communicating virtually and they don't need to be face to face.
Awesome. Really, really super point. So, Sangeeta, if there's one question that you would highlight, is there one from the studio audience that they'd like to jump in on?
Yes, there is. From my very good friend Elizabeth Settlecheck. How has quality been impacted, and what is your solution to ensure quality has not been impacted?
Anne-Marie's like chomping to jump in, and I feel like because of the origination of the question, we should offer it to Anne-Marie.
I'd like to have fun with it, but go ahead.
Yeah.
You can jump in after. How's that? So from our perspective, our quality scores have actually been, and our OTs have been fantastic. They have been even better. I will say they've continued to get better every month over month. So there's been no issues with that. We continue to do our call listening remotely, and our coaches are doing both virtual and side-by-sides. Our associates are able to listen in on the calls. So the systems that and practices that we did beforehand, we definitely are continuing to do to make sure that we're catching anything. But the feedback has been fantastic.
Awesome.
Mark, did you want to build?
Good.
Good. So we're going to, part of one of the benefit of having some experience and at least for one, some gray hair, is that I think that there are some big pitfalls that are worth talking about, because I think that there are some things that if you go down, it would be hard to come back from. So Mark, take a poke at a couple of the list, and we'll move through what we can.
I apologize. I lost audio for most of what Anne-Marie said, so
it was good.
She's amazing. How can it not be good?
It was good, man. You missed a meal.
Let me just say this for a minute too. I mean, so Future Frontier to us is also, I think, for all of us about sort of retooling all of the environments that we're working in, right? It's understanding what does a future state look like. So what percentage of people will we have permanently working from home versus bricks and mortar, right? And from a transition standpoint, I think this is important to share too. Like as Ontario starts opening up and the world starts opening up, we're going to have the responsibility of incrementally reintroducing people into our sites. Now, if you've got, as an example, a 50-50 split to make my math easy, now you can take your 200 seats in a site and just have 100 people in it. And you can have them naturally social distance with an incremental reintegration into the site, right? They're going to be physically apart until this whole dark cloud goes away and we can bring people in. when we bring them in, the one thing we'll see is if you can't fill those seats, you probably have excess real estate, so it changes your business model dramatically going forward, right? You might not need as much, you will not need as much real estate, guaranteed. And I don't know, from the 20,000 foot view, maybe it solves the Toronto traffic problem. I don't know how the adoption rate's going to go for all kinds of companies long term, but I doubt we're going to go back to what was normal in the past.
Yeah, no, I feel like the finance guy's going to have a real tough. He already has a good conversation for us. So let's, Anne-Marie, let's pick out one of the problems that people need to be really mindful for, and walk ourselves through that.
For sure. I would say don't assume, right? So for me, I have to be honest with you, it was one of those things where I just assumed that we're just going to get this done together and we're all marching in the same way. But truth be told, the quick reminder was not everyone reacts the same way or deals with adversity in the same way. And so realizing it very quickly had to change and trying to give people, again, more structure to help them with hope, I will also say, and certainty was really important to get them back on the track. But I think it was, again, about providing the right systems and the tools and the training to help people. But then also clarifying expectations to ensure people are leading the way that we expect them to lead. Because sometimes people aren't always showing up in the best way, and we have a lot of people to help to support. So it's really important that our team, myself included, is showing up in the best version of ourselves.
Awesome,
so,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
Really good, really good. If I can pick on the one that I don't think a lot of organizations know the difference between lead, coach, and manage, and I think now the order matters most of all. Right? Because if you get the order wrong and you're trying to manage in this new environment, like, can you turn on the camera so you can watch them? I think it's almost guaranteeing for failure. And I think the order matters in terms of lead. We needed to make sure that they got home safely and so on and so forth. Coach, so that we can help for improvement. But the truth is, we're going to need to transition and move over towards managing. So. We could spend a lot of time on pitfalls, but let's go on a little bit of best advice. And so, Mark, why don't you get us off a little bit in terms of just best advice? You're going to pick one of the many. We could have spent an hour. If we had another hour, we could have just spent it on pitfalls and best advice, and just pick one that you feel is really, really important.
If you guys can hear me, I've lost you.
Nope, you're back.
You're back, Mark. Stay away from the light. Okay, Anne-Marie, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'll take, which one will I choose? Routines and rituals. Love it. Again, it's really about.
I'm back. Sorry.
Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
I'm going to go ahead. So routines and rituals. I think it's really, again, about protecting and optimizing your environment, having structure, identify and block time out for what's really important to you and to get done. I always say schedule it, because if it's not in your schedule, the likelihood that it will get done and done well are slim. But also really critical, especially this time, but always, book time for you. Book time to rejuvenate, to make sure that you're creating time and space so that you can think about the future frontier. You can think about what's not working and get creative. But if you don't have time to rejuvenate, I think that becomes really difficult. And again, creating an operating system is part of routines and rituals so that you can understand, did I win? Did I lose? What lessons do I have to learn? What can I teach others? What can I build on from this? I think are really critically important. And again, finally, for me, it's always about giving people a compass, helping people get the direction so that you can help them know, are they winning? Are they losing? Same kind of thing. So that would be my best advice. Routines and rituals really do help.
Right. And if I can just have, before I see if Mark's back and can hear us, one of my clients is using the expression, back up the business. Because in a virtual world, the human glue isn't there that you used to be able to just shoulder tap and so on and so forth. So I feel like backing up the business and being better upstream on planning is it's going to be even more crucial for organizations.
Agree.
Mark, are you with us in spirit?
I'm back. I apologize again.
Yeah,
So
all
talk
good.
about investing in technology, right? Geez, I think I need
Yeah,
better
no,
internet. If you haven't touched on dynamic communication, I touched on it briefly at the beginning, right? So making sure that you are completely aligned. If you're a BPO or a corporate, you're aligned with your executives and your clients and what they need to see every day, because you got to keep creating that confidence every single day. You can get the plug pulled on you. Don't forget that we're not all unique centers for our clients. Sometimes we're in shared environments, right? So keeping them in the know is good. The other piece I'd say is that be transparent. You're not expected to be perfect out of the gate. You can't be perfect. This is completely unprecedented, right? So make sure that if you got challenges, be transparent, share that with them, work through it, and keep them updated all the way through. And the same goes to the employees. Recognize them as individuals, not as large groups of people, and pick the ones out that you really think might be struggling and just help them. Do your best to make them successful.
Yeah, awesome. I'm gonna pick my mine from orchestrated reset. I feel like the quarterly results are going to come in, and everybody's revenue will be affected, right? And then they've got these empty buildings that are fixed costs. They spent a whole bunch of capital costs to get somebody go. So there's a lot of pressure in the business to operate. It always was, but it's going to be. We moved from sort of a pendulum from a compassionate leader to now we have to manage, and I can feel the amount of we have to get back to business. We have to reset expectations, and so my whole thing is an orchestrated reset, as opposed to it feels like what the heck happened, and I think it actually could destroy a lot of trust and upend a lot of people at a time when we've got a lot of goodness going on inside of our operations, right? People are doing things together. This has brought us together, but it actually could alienate people almost overnight if we're not careful with the reset plan. So awesome. So onto our big picture, so we can zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to Anne-Marie, I'm going to ask if you can just get the floor and grab the mic as we look down on some of the spectacular scenery. Just a little bit of what what you would leave people with in terms of zooming out.
Yeah, when I think, again, speed of communication, I'd say that it's got to be fast. Before, I always used to say 100%, 110%. It doesn't have to be 100%. People need to, again, feel that certainty. They need to know that they're getting led forward. And even if you go in with a 90 and you say, but I'm coming back with more, here's what I will update you on. Here's when I will update you on it. But communication is critical so that people don't have to make it up themselves. They don't have to worry. So if they have other anxiety going on, they're not going to be able to focus and be their best selves and do what they do. Our jobs as leaders is to provide that vision and direction and guidance authentically. If we don't have the answer, we need to share that. And then again, as I said, make sure we're going back to say, when will we have the answer?
Awesome. Wow, that's good. Good zoom out. Mark, are you with us?
I'm with you. Yeah, I would say just be prepared to permanently retool your business, right? So this is not going to be, I think, personally, and an organization doesn't have, this is not a glitch. This is not something temporary. No one ever wants to get caught like this again. So be prepared to retool your business, have a certain percentage people always working at home. There'll be lots of hands up to do that. I'm sure people love it. Other people don't. Other people really want to be in that environment. So pick the right people, make sure you have the right tools, and then be prepared to keep your business running like that going forward.
Awesome. Really good advice. I'm going to finish on, I'm a glass half full guy. And so I think that this is our greatest moment. For those that have lived through, the internet was going to make call centers go away and click and close was going to do anything. I think that human connection right now and the ability to be able to do remote sales and service remotely isn't even a nice idea right now. It is a strategic constraint for organizations. I had like 4 calls this week alone where people are like, why do we need a face-to-face sales force? Our technicians, maybe we don't have as many because we can do a lot of things remotely. So I think this is one of our greatest hours right now in terms of people that run, remote sales and service teams. And I choose that language carefully. Remote sales and service is different than a contact center. But I think it's a really a pretty amazing time for us to be able to kind of be able to take over and to be able to contribute to our organizations in a way that we've never been able to before. So, as we leave you, Maestro, and we get back on, first of all, to Anne-Marie and Mark, despite the technical realities, I applaud you and thank you very much for your contribution. I owe you another cup of coffee and hopefully a cold beer at some time in the future. Instead of a bunch of rambling notes, part of what we were going to do was a little bit of a guidebook that went along with this webinar. It is something that people could do with their teams to actually, bisect the plan and actually not try and boil the ocean. So if, as a result of joining the session today, we're going to give you a gift to fly away with, and something that you can you'll get early or sometime next week. Okay. So Sangeeta, take us home. We are, despite some glitch and some thing, we are on time so that people, between us and a cold beer on the weekend, we want to make sure we do. So off to you, Sangeeta.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you. We do have a couple more just housekeeping items, 4 minutes left to go. As Bruce said, very mindful of your time. So next week, Mike Aoki is actually facilitating a session hosted and sponsored by Landtelligence. And the topic is the impact of COVID-19 on customer expectations. Speaker Roy Atkinson, top 50 ICMI thought leader on Twitter, and from group principal analyst from Informatech. And then on the 29th of May, also at 2 p.m., Amazon is sponsoring a webinar, same time slot, always blocked Friday at 2. And it's the next generation contact centers with Amazon, with Aaron Hall, a solutions architect with AWS, and our very own Nigel Weischer, Director of Service Enablement at CI Financial and a GTech influencer. So those will be awesome. And then we have more sessions lined up, which we'll share in the upcoming session. And then I always like to just promote this quickly. It's a musical from Unsung Heroes, produced by Neil Glynn. He's one of our GTech influencers, very active in the contact center community. And this is a musical fundraiser. I think it's, his 7th one. All of them have been live before, but this one will be virtual. And the funds all go to Camp Ooch, which is for children with cancer. And all the charities have been greatly impacted because of this, COVID. So if you can sponsor or make a team event of this wonderful musical, your funds are going to be going to a great place. I just wanted to share that at this time. Now we do, awesome. It's 2:58. The session, our official session is over, but if our speakers can stay on, we have 2 questions that we couldn't get to, but we just like to be very respectful of your very demanding schedules that all of our attendees have. So with that, I say have a great, safe, long weekend. We are in this together. Our speakers just want to serve and help each other, help all of you. So have a great weekend, but I'm going to now go back to our speakers with a couple of questions. All of you are welcome to stay on, but if you have to hop off to another call, stay safe. Okay, so I have some questions here. So one question is from Bruce Brackett, and his question is, what technology or processes do you use now or your teams that you just can't live without, such as video conferencing or huddles? What are some things that you really can't live without now?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so we use something called the secure remote management technology. And basically what it does is it takes either a BYOD or bring your own device or a company issued device, and it ensures that it's completely locked down as a terminal. So this is more for PCI and information protection reasons, where you can't put a USB into your port. You can't do anything. It just acts as a terminal. You can only log in. You can't do, you can only log in through a CRM if it's a client CRM. It just restricts you from doing anything other than the absolute work that you need to do, right? So at this point, it's a tool that we absolutely need to sort of sets the foundation to keep the security requirements, the information protection requirements exactly in line with what our customers receiving when they were in our bricks and mortar environment.
Super.
Okay. So I have another question here.
Did you get that, or did I freeze again?
No, you're good. You were very audible.
We got it.
Okay. I can ask the next one? So the next question is from Tim Richardson around personal conversations. If you're not a good candidate to work from home, he said they're challenging, but how to be honest and allow, I guess, the person to rebuild their confidence. How do we give that opportunity for the people to develop their confidence if they're not ideally a good candidate?
I think I got it. So if it's if we're saying that the associate is clearly, if they don't have the soft skills or there's a concern with their performance from home, again, it's about having the authentic conversations, because in this time right now, there's time for them to build a skill. So is it an absolute, they can't do it at all? And so it's about coaching to what they're capable of. And then again, your work from home, you might choose to say, you know what, we're going to have a percentage of people come back to the office, but if you have this skill or you demonstrate this performance, you'll be able to go out. So at least they still have hope, and that you can build them up, but that would be a coach's role. Hope I answered that question, Tim.
And if I can jump in, I think having this exact same conversation was an issue, 6 months ago, let alone 6 weeks ago. So the ability for team managers to actually be able to, somebody who was probably their peer at one point, to have that kind of conversation, I think it's only highlighted increasingly more. It's just increased the number of these that you would have somebody required to have.
I agree, because there's going to be a difference between having technical issues from working from home and their capability. So separating the two and having, again, authentic conversations. To Bruce's point, they may not have been performing when they were in the center. We either didn't catch it, we weren't coaching to it, and everyone had to go home. So we were forced. But now you have choice to make sure the right people are doing the right thing.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's a wrap.
C'est tout fini?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
That was
So
my bad.
we only went 2 minutes over.
Okay.
That's okay. It was important to be very respectful and get people on their weekend. So, are we offline? Are we offline now? Can we say all kinds of funny things? No, it's all good. So, Maestro Mike, you did a great job, Maestro.
There you go.
Oh, you did.
Fantastic.
You guys were awesome.
And
Sorry,
Mark,
are we offline right now?
No, we're still online. So Mark,
we're on. We're
that doesn't matter.
recording.
That doesn't matter.
It's all good.
And we'll officially
I
end
was the one with the glitchy internet today, so.
Yeah, you were the glitchy internet. I was feeling really happy to have logged in on the phone.
All right.
Yeah.
It was great.
Bye, everybody. Okay, so we'll end the webinar. All right, bye, everyone.
Hope you're welcome.
As well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Have a great weekend.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.